Okay, all right, let's get situated here. Hello. All right, let's pull this up. I just want to make sure I have my notes here. Perfect. Okay, hi. If you are just joining me, I'm Brittany Stoeckel. I'm a nurse practitioner in the ICU, and I'm also a yoga teacher, retreat leader. I do a lot of coaching for women in healthcare, specifically very burnt out ones, or it's not even just burnout, it's times of transition. Also, if I'm kind of looking at two different cameras, I'm trying to record this in two different places for a variety of reasons, so I can share it later as a replay, but just don't get tripped out by that. So I don't just work with burnt out women in healthcare. It almost ends up being anytime women are in transition in healthcare. So I have a lot of clients that are nearing retirement and slowly decreasing their hours or, just weaning themselves out of the healthcare environment completely. I have a couple clients who are in NP school. I have a couple clients who transitioned out of NP school into different programs. I have helped a lot of clients get into critical care. I've helped clients get out of travel nursing. And I think that it really all boils down to when women in healthcare are in need of a change, a lot of times it comes from a place of burnout, and you have to address these things separately, right? You have to address the burnout inducing mindsets and behaviors and patterning, and then you also need to do a lot of that structural change. So I end up doing a little bit of all of these things, and I absolutely love it that way. So if you're super new to this environment, I used to teach a lot of these classes here live in the Facebook group from like 2020 to, I don't know, late 2022, maybe a little bit in 23. And then I had a baby, and obviously things had to shift a little bit. I have had a really big client roster, and I really wanted to make sure that all of my one-on-one clients were like top priority. So the last couple of years, that's been what I've been mostly working on. And also, I know that it's time for me to kind of get back into this world. And one of my big goals for 2025 was to restructure my business in a way in which I can not only serve my one-on-one clients, but I can also create things that can serve a broader population, if that makes sense. So thankfully, with the help of technology, and I've learned so much about technology that I never thought I would need to know running a business. But there are ways that I can distribute helpful information and services and support to a broader group when I do things in certain ways. So one of the ways that I did that was I completely revamped my website. So if you haven't checked that out yet, it is so much more helpful. I'm not entirely done, but I'm very, very close. I got rid of all the old clunky landing pages. Everything's like interconnected. I sent out an email about that the other day. If you're interested in checking it out, I will drop the link to it below. But I kind of made it so that my website can be an asset and a supportive resource for a variety of women in healthcare, and not just my one-on-one clients. So that was one of the things. Another thing was getting back in this Facebook group, having more like workshops and live sessions like we used to do in 2020. And then I'm also, this is actually new information, I am also going to be starting our group programs back up. So in those years, like 2020 to 2023, we did a ton of smaller group programs like throughout the year. And we always had a lot of people join, and it was a really good experience for everybody. And also it was just very time consuming. So I had to put those on the back burner just to survive toddlerhood. But my daughter's 2 now, and things are really looking up. So we can get back into that. So I actually just decided yesterday that the next course we are going to reopen is time design. And I'm going to chat a little bit more about that towards like the end. But time design is one of my favorite courses that I've ever made. And I think it's really necessary. And it will totally make sense if you wanted to come to this workshop. That's going to be a really nice next step for you. And I will explain why as we go. So if you're here live, feel free to drop a hashtag live in the comments. Facebook reach and Facebook groups and lives are not what they used to be. Back in the day, anytime I would go live, like almost the whole group would see it. That is not the case anymore. They've changed a ton. So I did send out a reminder to the email list, and I am going to attempt to capture the replay, which is why I'm filming it in 2 places. Sometimes Facebook video goes kaput on us halfway, and it's really annoying, but I will make sure we have a backup getting recorded right there. So let's get into it. So let's talk about our days off. I know, and actually it's perfect because I worked this weekend, so today is my day off from healthcare. At least I don't work a ton in the hospital anymore, so it's a little bit different lifestyle, but I am really glad that I'm teaching this on an actual day off, and I had this morning off to kind of practice what I preach, and now I'm here teaching it. So let's, oops, one second, our little replay video knocked over. Oh dear. There we go. We'll try that. Let's get started. So I wanted to start with the days off. I'm so sorry. One second. Little technical problems here. I think this is what happens when you try to use your water bottle as a... I think we're going to lose that. That's okay. Okay. We'll just pray that this saves later. I wanted to start with creating the days off ritual because there's only so much we can do about our actual shifts at work. There's only so much we can do about our actual time in caregiving, and there is a lot to be done there. I don't want to be disempowering, but we have a lot more control about our life outside of work, and I think that the clients that I have worked with the longest, I have seen the biggest shift in their life and the biggest shift in their experience of working in healthcare and the biggest shift in their perspectives and their decision making and their boundaries when we focused on fixing their days off first, right? Because we can only control so much in the healthcare environment, but we have a lot of control. We have a lot of choice on what we do outside of work. So let's start there. So like I said, I'm Brit Stoeckel, ICU NP. I do surgical critical care. If you're ever interested in that, I love talking to people. If you ever want to get into surgical critical care or are going to NP school, like send me a DM. I love to support people in that. Obviously, I also have been a yoga teacher for a long time, a retreat leader. We're actually leaving for our 4th annual Costa Rica retreat. I'm leaving on Thursday. Everyone else will be arriving on Sunday, and I can't wait to meet this group. We have some repeat customers and some new people that I've never met before, and it's going to be spectacular. And then I do a lot of coaching for women in healthcare. So a little bit of my story was I have actually worked in healthcare since I was 17 years old. I graduated high school when I was 17. I was just like a younger birthday. God, I'm afraid for the video quality here. Send up a prayer to the tech gods. I knew I wanted to work in healthcare even when I was in high school. I didn't know. I had never even heard of an NP at that time. I was like thinking I want to be a pharmacist. I remember that being like a top contender when I was young. I really liked chemistry. And then I heard about this program that we got to experience healthcare careers when we were still in high school. So I did that. It was awesome. And I got assigned to be a nurse co-op, nurse assistant my senior year of high school, like 3 mornings a week. I literally took the short bus there from my public high school, and it was amazing. I thought it was great. I got paid $7 an hour, and I helped feed the elderly. I made beds, like whatever the lowest hanging fruit, lowest risk activities that a nurse assistant would do, they would delegate to me, and I thought it was amazing. And I actually ended up working there for a long time. I actually still work at that hospital. It's been a journey, a little bit in and out in a bunch of different roles, but I actually still work at that hospital today. And that was 20 years ago, which is kind of nuts. But it's been a really great experience, and I honestly would not have done anything different. However, I did experience so much burnout and so much numbing, and because I started in this career so young, I didn't know any different. And I was just talking to one of my friends, an old roommate. She's also an NP in a very different kind of environment, but she used to be an ICU nurse. And we were just talking about how crazy it is that because we never had other jobs, we just went straight into healthcare out of high school. We sometimes don't recognize how crazy and abnormal and unusual and stress-inducing the healthcare environment, especially in critical care, and especially in inpatient. We kind of don't realize how unusual that environment is. We just start to think, oh, this is normal, this is adulthood, this is work life. And if we aren't aware of how unusual this environment is to work in, we can start saying yes to a bunch of things and not developing the intense self-care skills necessary to cope with that environment, and really bad things can happen. Burnout, just quitting that entirely. There's a lot of like substance abuse in nurses. There's a lot of relationship problems, because if we're not, being our favorite best self, it can destroy other things in our life. Just that self-care piece is such a skill that we have to work in that environment, and we're not taught that in school, and I think we should be. Maybe things are different now. I'm a little bit old. Okay, so I got very burned out during grad school. I decided to deconstruct everything I believed about work, about overgiving, about being a good person, about contributing, about money, everything. I broke it all down and rebuilt it. And I think that going through that process myself and knowing how much better my life is now, and then helping a few clients at a time, and then continuing to now having been in business for 6 years and having a lot of previous clients that are in completely different places now, I realize this work is so important to get out, and I'm committed now more than ever to make sure that other people are aware that there is a very different reality available to you if you're experiencing healthcare burnout. Okay. So as I was rebuilding everything, I realized there's kind of like two paths that a lot of us take on our days off. So I know I have been in that cycle of like working my 3 shifts, or working all 6 in a row so I can leave for 8 days or whatever, or just like getting them out of the way. Like I have worked those like repeated shifts and night shift and all of those things. And then on my days off have experienced that collapsing, numbing avoidance, and like trying to trick myself into believing that that was rest. I have definitely been there. But there are other options, and that collapsing, numbing, avoiding, that's where like the substance abuse comes in. That's where like the bed rot comes in. That's where like a lot of the habits that are not actually in our best interest and we would not pick consciously, but those things can exist when we're in that mode. That is one option, but there is such a better option of being intentional about recovering on your days off. Okay, so in this call right now, we're just going to challenge the default belief that numbing, collapsing, avoiding is rest. Okay, so we're going to help design a day that actually refuels you, recalibrates you mentally, emotionally, physically, holistically, right? That actually kind of like brings you back to life and reminds you how there's so much more to life than what we're experiencing in healthcare. Okay. All right. So I know a lot of you are here because you're like feeling tired, on your days off. Your days off kind of feel like catch-up days for the rest of your life. A lot of times it'll be packed full of chores, like almost in the same way that our like nursing shift or whatever is full of tasks throughout the full 12 hours. A lot of clients, when they come to me, I look at their calendar. We do a calendar detox. That's a big part of time design, is to really detox our calendar. And I look at your calendars for you, and we can kind of make up a better solution together. But it will literally be like back-to-back appointments and tasks and chores and responsibilities. So a lot of times these days off are not actually healthy, restorative, nervous system healing days off. They're just you applying productivity and efficiency and this like frantic doing, grasping energy to a different part of your life. Okay, so this is not going to actually swing you back into regulation. It's actually just keeping you in that same state, and there has to be a better way. But I get that. Another thing I hear from a lot of women in healthcare is that if they do less, if they rest, if they actually use their days off to kind of recalibrate their brain, they feel like they're being lazy. That is a mental construct and a mindset that we have to deconstruct, and it takes a little bit longer than I have in this 1 hour time frame today. But if you're someone who feels like if you don't do a ton of work and a ton of effort and chores and tasky to-do list, and you're like giving your all the time, even on your days off, if you feel that if you're not doing that, that you're somehow lazy or less than, or like in a bad person. Like once I do coaching with people, a lot of times we'll get to the root. Why do you believe that? Why do you believe that? They'll get down to the root of this belief that if you are not overgiving and spreading yourself really thin, that you're actually a bad person. And that is a completely misguided belief that we need to look at intentionally and consciously and be like, where did that come from? Why do I believe that? And am I going to allow that to continue to exist in my brain? Okay. So women in healthcare are not tired because they are lazy. They are tired because they are overloaded with stuff on their calendar and their schedule that they did not consciously choose. Okay, I'm going to say that again because that is something that I remember when I heard that. I was like, oh my God, this is a thought that I had never had before. Okay. You're not tired because your days are, you're not tired because you're lazy. You're tired because your day is like filled to the brim with a bunch of tasks, chores, obligations, commitments, and tasky to-do list things that you did not consciously put there. Okay. It got that full because you just kept saying yes to every single bid for your attention, every single bid for your time, and now your schedule looks nothing like who you actually are. So, one of the ways that I teach this is that healthcare, and I think just womanhood in general, but healthcare is an example of this. I think there's a lot of this in mothering, just being a person out in the world. The universe, all of this is an endless ask. There is always something more you could be doing. There is always something more that's being asked of you. And it is your responsibility to have the boundary and communication skills to know what to say yes to and what to say no to. Okay? Again, this is a much broader, bigger discussion, but if you're someone that needs some help with that, send me a message. I would love to support you in that. It's a huge part of the work that I do with clients is helping them develop the voice and the boldness to be able to say, yes, that's for me. No, that's for someone else. Yes, I have the bandwidth for that. No, I'm not the right person to fulfill that need right now. That yes and that no is so important for your own well-being, because if you say yes to every single request for your effort and your giving, you are saying no to something else. You're saying no to quiet time. You're saying no to time with your family. You're saying no to self-care, all of these things. Every yes is a no to something else. That's just how the universe works. We can't have it all and do it all. So if we keep saying yes, there's obviously no's happening behind the scenes and we don't even know about it. Okay. So the reason that your calendar got like it is because you just kept saying yes to every bid and request for your time and your efforts. So now your schedule is a mess. It looks nothing like who you are. And it looks nothing like how you would design your life consciously and thoughtfully from an empowered, bold, boundaried, self-love place. Okay. And that's really that I see that so commonly in all of the millions of women I talk to. And that's why I really thought that time design was the best thing to bring back this quarter. So it's a huge part of the work that we do there, but a lot of it starts with clearing out your calendar of things that should have never been there in the first place. Okay. I think it's so common for women to think that they should be able to do everything. So they always say yes, and then they get to a point where they can't do everything well. So they're struggling and they're at their max capacity all of the time. And they're just feeling like they're failing, even though they're like they're over giving and they're like overperforming, if that makes sense. Okay. So we're going to do a little bit of an experiment. I just want to check one thing here. Make sure this is all still working. Okay, I think we're still good. We're gonna do a little bit of an experiment here. So if you're here live or if you're watching this as a replay, I'm gonna have you close your eyes. One hand on your heart, one hand on your belly. And mixing this nervous system work into healthcare recovery is my absolute favorite. So I'm really glad to be back here teaching some classes on this. Start to take a couple deep breaths in through your nose. Maybe just relax your shoulders. And I'm going to read some statements, and all I want you to do is just listen, let them come in your ears, and just notice what it does to your body to hear these words. Okay? I am worthy of meticulous care. I am worthy of slow, gentle pampering and alone time to recover from my shifts. Just notice what that feels like when you hear that in your body. I know that filling my cup is an essential part of giving to others. I let go of my feelings about my recent shifts. Yes, people call me and those in my profession superheroes and angels, but I'm actually just a real, normal human who needs rest. It is not greedy or selfish for me to enjoy downtime. Today, I release the need to be productive in order to feel loved. I know that caring for myself today will help me love people more and get more shit done tomorrow. I am not a victim to my job or my schedule. I choose self-love and know that self-care is my responsibility. Just take a minute to reflect on what that brings up in your brain, in your soul, in your body. Do these things feel real? Does it feel so far away from your lived experience that you're like very suspicious that any of that can be true for you? All right, and then flicker your eyes open if you close them. Okay, I just want you to sit with that for a second of what that brought up. Do these things feel real? Do these things feel true? Are these statements like, oh, must be nice for someone else? Or like, oh, I can't wait till I have my life under control so I can feel like that too. It's like for somebody else. Very, very common. We're going to get back to that a little bit as we go, but I just like to do that like physical body experience early on, because your body will tell you what those thoughts mean to you. Okay, so if you feel clenched, tight, pissed, sad about any of those statements not feeling true in your body, it's just a signal. It's just a sign. It is not a personal failure. It is a sign of a really good, empathetic, sensitive person existing inside a very potentially toxic structure or environment in healthcare. Okay, obviously there's structural work to be done and systems work to be done, and there are other amazing people that are working on that. That is not for me. I like to work with the individual. I like to see what we can do about your internal experience as someone working in that environment and learning those boundaries and that communication skills to say enough is enough. Here's what I have to contribute. After that, I'm a no. Okay? Two different sides of the coin, both really important, but I'm here to help the individuals who work in that environment. Okay, so why do a lot of our days off still leave us burnt out or even continue to contribute to burnout? One of my most recent clients that I started working with, she was like, I don't know if you're right to work with because my burnout doesn't come from healthcare. I actually really like my job. Her burnout was very collective between being a toddler mom and having a lot going on. It wasn't just healthcare. That was part of it. She happened to be a woman who worked in healthcare, but it wasn't the main thing. But I will just tell you right now, it's all cumulative, okay? And when we know that it's all cumulative, that actually is very empowering, because it reminds us that even if we can't change all of the systems and all of the intricacies of the healthcare system, if we change the other things that could potentially be accumulating in our burnout buckets in ourselves, if we can control those other things, which we have a lot more control over than the huge systems of healthcare, that's actually really helpful, because we can kind of lighten our burden and lessen our burnout experience if we address those things that we have control over. Okay, so but why do we still feel kind of burnt out with these days? So if you've ever like had a long string of shifts or had like a bunch of really bad shifts in a row, and then you like woke up on your first day off and you're like, oh my god, now I have to like put out fires in my own life, right? You are very much not alone. Like, so many healthcare workers, especially women, are living in this like constant state of nervous system overload. Okay, we are trained to stay in this like highly productive, highly efficient, high functioning, over giving, over functioning state of exhaustion, of giving and giving and giving until we literally have nothing left. We're like scraping the bottom of the barrel on energy. Okay, we are trained to stay in that energy because it makes us a good worker, right? And if you dig into it a little bit deeper, for lack of a better term in the English language, like if you look at Eastern languages, they have a much better way to translate this, but that energy is masculine. And I don't mean masculine, feminine, like men and women. I mean it like in the old Eastern tradition way of masculine being like structure and efficiency and fire and like fierceness and protective and that like doing energy, versus in Lost in Translation, the feminine side of things being soft and cool and refreshing and flowy and the energy that moves. A lot of times they'll talk about it as like the masculine side is like the banks of the river, the walls that keep the water inside the river, and then the feminine being the like flowy water that's coming through, right? It is very good for our employers for us to stay in that rigid, productive, efficient, like the walls of the river state, even though the ability to balance those two and to go into whichever one is called for on any given day or any given moment is really how we stay healthy. That when we talk about balance, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the ability to pick which of those sides you're in at any given time instead of staying stuck in one side. And there are probably people that get stuck in the other side of they're like, oh, willy-nilly flowy, and like they can't survive there either. But I just know for a lot of the women in healthcare that I work with, we get stuck in that like hyper masculine, and I don't mean men, women, that like rigid, high functioning efficiency state, the effort state. A lot of times when I teach this, it's like that's the effort side, and then there's the ease side. Effort and ease is a really good, sometimes they'll do structure and flow, okay? But anyways, we get stuck in that structure side, and that is so exhausting, especially for women if we can't go back and forth, okay? So there's kind of like two things I see happen, two paths of destruction that I see people fall into on their days off. So one being that like passive collapse, and then the other one being this like catch-up chaos. Now, both of these things perfectly describe two different states of the nervous system, okay? So if you're gonna just go on a nervous system journey with me for a second, we have our autonomic nervous system, and there's the sympathetic side and the parasympathetic side. Our sympathetic side is going to help us run away and survive. The parasympathetic side is the side that wants to fix us and heal us and protect us. It's very compassionate. It's recovery side. So we'll hear that sympathetic side is your fight or flight. There are other ones, but fight or flight for this little synopsis, fight or flight. And then on the parasympathetic side is our rest and digest, and usually procreate is on that side, okay? So if we are in our sympathetic state all the time, eventually our body, if our body doesn't know we're gonna survive this, we will actually, our body is so compassionate towards us that at some point when we've been running from the tiger and trying to survive and fighting, and that we've been in that fight or flight state for so long that our body's like, you're not gonna get away from the tiger, you're not gonna make it. Our nervous system does actually switch automatically. We don't even have any conscious control over this. We'll automatically switch over to this parasympathetic state that is compassionate. And it is kind of the part of our nervous system that's like, you're not going to survive this. You're not going to be able to run away from this tiger. So you should play dead. You should faint, or feign sometimes is like, you should shut down and collapse and pretend that you're dead. That's your only best choice, because you're not going to be able to run away from this bear. So I hope that example makes sense. But that sympathetic nervous system side is attempting to fight and attempting to run away. But at some point, if you stay in that system for so long, your body is not gonna, because you're made to go back and forth. And in fact, you're actually made to stay in parasympathetic state a vast majority of the time, and only acutely pop into sympathetic when you need to run away from the bear, and then come back to that parasympathetic state, okay? In healthcare, 40 hours or more a week, like we are constantly being kept in that sympathetic nervous system state. And unless you have excellent skills at putting yourself back into a parasympathetic state when you leave work, you're kind of going to stay in that sympathetic nervous state. And if you stay there too long, eventually your nervous system is going to say, we're not going to make it. I need to collapse. I need to pretend that I'm dead so that the tiger will like run on to try to chase some different prey. Maybe they'll have compassion on me. When you are getting to your days off and you are feeling like you need to passively collapse, numbing out, doom scrolling, bed rot, sleeping for 14 hours, the substance abuse stuff that's coming in, that's an attempt to numb. That's an attempt to be like, I'm not gonna win. I'm not gonna survive this. So I need to numb out, doom scroll, bed rot, sleep for 14 hours. Okay, it's an attempt to numb the pain of what we've been witnessing at work. It's an attempt to survive the constant sympathetic circulation that we've stayed in for way, way, way too long. Okay, so I actually think that if you are getting to that place of passive collapse on your days off, the numbing out, doom scrolling, bed rot side of things, I'm actually a little bit more concerned about your burnout state than if you're in the second one, which is like that catch-up chaos. Catch-up chaos, and it sounds like I'm saying ketchup like mustard and ketchup. I think that's just because I have a toddler and we deal with a lot of ketchup right now, but catching up with chores and chaos, cleaning, organizing, errands, caretaking. You're still very productive, but you're staying in that sympathetic state. Okay, you're kind of like taking that frantic, high-intensity effort that you have perfected at work and you're just doing it at home on different projects. Okay, so I can talk about this all day, but I just want you to know that a lot of people fall into one of those two categories, passive collapse or the catch-up chaos. And if you are getting into that passive collapse side, please send me a message, because that is a very unsafe place to be in. That is when your nervous system is like, you're not going to survive this. Like, your nervous system is attempting to ease your pain. It is like a palliative state, okay? And I know you guys will understand what I mean by that. It is an attempt to mitigate the symptoms of sympathetic overload and not being able to run away from the tiger, okay? Bad, bad, bad sign. And no one ever tells you that. People say, that's normal, you signed up for this, this is just how it is to work in healthcare. That is absolutely not true. I know that one of the ways that helped me realize that that is not normal is to have a husband, like back when he was my boyfriend, like getting to know him, getting to know someone very closely who did not work in healthcare. And he works a lot, but he loves his work, and it's not like life or death situations. And when he would get out of work, he would have energy to go for a bike ride or go out to eat on his days off. He's so healthy. And I was like working night shift neurotrauma inner city hospital and in grad school at the time, and I was a disaster. And on my days off, I was like, turn the lights off. I want to be in my room by myself in sensory deprivation. So being able to be like, oh, this is not normal. This is not a normal lived experience, helped open my eyes. So if you are for the first time hearing that it is not normal to be numbed out, collapsed, doom scrolling, bed rot, sleeping for 14 hours on your days off, or experiencing a lot of substance abuse that we see in the healthcare community, if I'm the first person to explain to you that that is not normal, you're welcome. And please come DM me, send me a message, sign up for one of my classes, whatever you got to do. Come to our retreat sometime. We have to help. We have to fix that. Okay. So if you want to fix that, reach out to me. I would love to help you straighten that out a little bit. Okay. But neither of those two, the passive collapse or the catch-up chaos, are actually like recovery and rest. So what is the alternative? Like, how do we actually fix that? So there's a lot of work to be done there, a lot of unraveling, a lot of lifestyle changes that need to be made. But if I could just jump ahead to, like, if you are my client for a year and we've adjusted everything, you got a new job, or you cut back your hours, you hired out some help, you delegated, you learned how to ask for help, whatever, all of the different things that we do. Let's say we jump ahead a year. I'm just gonna like give you the cheat sheet to what it would be like to jump ahead a year. It looks like active, intentional, on purpose recovery on your days off. Okay, so active recovery is simple. It is 5 senses. There's actually more than 5 senses, but you start with the 5 senses: seeing, tasting, hearing, sight. I can never remember all 5 of them in a row. I always forget one. But it is a very physical, body, nervous system recovery. The word nourishing comes up. Sometimes that word gives me the heebie-jeebies for, I don't know why, but nourishing, like in a sense of like there are a lot of things that your body needs that it did not get over the last few days when you've been working. Okay. Active, intentional, on purpose recovery is not driven by productivity. It is not staying in that like hyper efficiency effort lane. It is you balancing the scales by being in flow and being taken care of and receiving. It's about being present, processing what you've seen, healing your body, okay? It helps your brain process all of the emotions and the physical experiences that you've had at work, okay? So this is where I love to differentiate between routines and rituals. So if you've done time design before, or if you've heard me talking back since 2020, the words routine, ritual, and rhythm are going to come up a lot, okay? So a routine is an efficient, automatic, habitual. It keeps things moving. It's very masculine. It's very effort-based because it decreases effort, right? The point of it is like it helps you go faster because it takes away resistance. So like things like how Steve Jobs would wear the same outfit every day, or people that meal prep and just take their meal, you know, they have the routine of like on Sundays they prep all their meals and then they can just take it. It like decreases friction towards where you're going. It keeps things moving, like, you know, things that are very habitual. So brushing your teeth, like a lot of times for like nurses, like checking vitals, it's just like you go in the room and you know it's time. You're just like going through the motions. You almost don't have to think about it. It can be like loading the dishwasher, things like that. So very automatic, very habitual. There are some people who do very well with these kinds of things, and that is helpful. I don't want anyone to think I'm anti-routine. I love a routine. I have a weekly routine. I usually call it a rhythm because like in Hack Your Happiness, we talk about how doing the same thing every day just doesn't work for women. It just doesn't work for people that work in healthcare. So not thinking that doing the same thing every day is the best way to live. I also don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater on routines. They have their time and place, okay? But they are very different than what is a ritual or a rhythm. So in this sesh, we're going to kind of talk about rituals. So these are mindful, they're intentional, they're kind of like symbolic sometimes. It marks a moment in time. Think about like example of like lighting a candle after a hard shift to just kind of like bring yourself back to a calm state. Putting on a playlist. I love a playlist for a state change, right? You might create a driving home from work playlist that helps you like remind yourself like I'm off work now, okay? Drinking your coffee slowly. It can be things that help us let go of something that just happened and move into a different part of time. I like to think of it as like a stamp in time. Okay, so say you had a rough bunch of shifts, you had a lot of like really sad patient situations or low staffing or whatever chaos, and then you have a week off. And you're like, oh God, I don't want to be thinking about my healthcare shifts. I want to be in a state of recovery. So it would be very helpful for you to have a ritual to like slice time, everything that came before the healthcare shifts, everything that comes after is this vacation state that you're in. Okay, because how often do you hear about people in healthcare like, oh, I worked 6 days in a row, so I could have 8 days off, but it took me 5 days into vacation until I felt like I was like actually restored. And then they have 2 days and then 1 day of travel and they're back on for their 6. It's like, if you could do a ritual to zero in and be like, here's where healthcare stops and here's where my vacation or my day off begins, that's what I'm talking about. It's like a stamp in time. It helps us let go of what happened already and step into what's next, okay? These are the missing pieces for when you feel like your body is at home, but like your brain is still back in that one room at work where something really hard happened, okay? Their rituals and routines are very different things, and we need them, you know, we want to rely on routines and habits to make some parts of our life smoother, but we don't want to stay in that mode. Our rituals is how we drop into this like recovery state on purpose, okay? It switches from being in that collapse state to actual recovery and care. So a couple of the mindset shifts things that you got to address, and I definitely don't have time to cover in detail here, is your belief that you deserve rest. A lot of the women that come to me, they feel guilty or resistant about resting. I know that I did at one point in my life. A lot of them are moms, caregivers, just like oldest daughters, you know, parentified children as adults. And they're just used to equating their worth with productivity. So rest feels unproductive. Rest feels immoral for a lot of them. If you get down to the root cause of things, they believe that they don't deserve rest. Okay, just listen to this phrase: we can only sustainably care for other people with the depth with which we take care of ourselves. Okay. Just stop and play that again if you need to hear that again if you're watching the replay. But we can only sustainably care for other people with the depth with which we take care of ourselves. Obviously, all of these things that I'll briefly go over, you don't have to do them all every day, but like pick your favorite and do them as your ritual, okay? Feeling like you need to do all of them is just you staying in that trap of, I gotta accomplish everything, and I need to do everything on my to-do list to be worthy. Nope. You deserve to pick one or two and have that be your ritual. You deserve rest. You deserve recovery time on your days off, okay? All right. The next part is going to be like actually designing your recovery day. And I'm realizing I'm a little talker and I'm very passionate about this work, and this is going to be cut short a little bit. I did do a separate video about this sense protocol that I can link below here, but I'm just going to briefly go over this, and you want to pick something from each of these categories to have in your day off. So sense, S-E-N-S-E, the word sense, which is perfect. Sleep, environment, nourishment, stillness, and enjoyment. You're going to want to have something from each of these categories to shift yourself into a rest state on your day off. The main goal is to feel good for as many of the minutes as possible that day and to achieve a state of deep rest. Okay, so sleep. Obviously, we need to be very proactive about how much sleep we get the day before work, the day after work, etc. Because obviously we're frequently getting up early or staying up late. What do you got to do to structure your life and your home so that you can get enough sleep? Okay. On your days off, if at all possible, to not set an alarm, getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep, maybe an hour more than you usually get or you think you need. Sleep is very much not a luxury. I like to remind people that no professional athlete would skimp out on sleep, and we have a job that is just as mentally and sometimes physically taxing as what these people are doing physically in professional sports, and they would never mess around with their sleep because they know how important it is. Okay, if you have little kids, you can create stuff that you guys can do together. If you're not getting enough rest because you have little kids, can you take a nap together? Can you have quiet time? I think these are things that we can instill in our children from a very young age to be supportive of home being a restful place. I know that we take sleep extremely seriously in our house, and keep in a peaceful, quiet, calm environment as much of the time as possible is something, if you start young, it will just be what they know normally, so it's never too late to get started on that. Something that I like to do when I first wake up, if I remember, is to, before I even open my eyes, think about something I'm grateful for. So if you can start the very first second of your day from a state of gratitude, eventually you're going to develop the neuroplasticity and train your brain to be looking for things to be grateful for. I promise you, your life will change overnight if you master this skill, okay? Because if you can train your brain to always be looking for what's going well and what's working, your lived experience is going to be full of a lot more things that are going well or working, okay? Decide on one thing that would feel really good that day. What would make today amazing? Okay, commit to doing that one thing. It might be movement, it might be sleep, it might be taking an everything shower, it might be a dance party. For me, frequently, it's making pancakes for my daughter. It might be getting outside and seeing the sun. It might be, tackling a hobby that you've been wanting to do for a while, or sitting and reading a book. Pick one thing that you're going to do and commit to it, okay? Then before you get out of bed, try not to look at your phone. I have lots of tips for this inside of Time Design if you're interested in healing your relationship with technology and social media and all of those dopamine endless scroll things that they have created that are kind of dangerous for our brains. Take a couple deep breaths. I also have a separate video of 3 yoga poses, yoga moves that you can do in bed, which is so fun. So just a gentle supine twist, Google it. Gentle, just Google supine twist. It's really just twisting your back while you're laying down. I would also have you look up reclined bound angle. In the previous version of this course this workshop was 2 hours, and I had time to go through all of this, how to set this up, and because I love yoga and it's really important. But just Google reclined bound angle and do that shape before you get out of bed. That's also a really good one to do right after an IC or right after a healthcare shift. It's the opposite of hunching over a computer or hunching over a procedure every day. It's very heart open, body relaxed, and then if you sit weird and type all day, you cross your legs weird, a lot of us have this internal rotation of our hips throughout the day. It's the opposite of that. Your legs are kind of splayed open. It's very peaceful and restorative. It can get you into that parasympathetic state very quickly. Okay, E, environment. So S is sleep, E is environment. Can you clean up the visual clutter of your house? So having a very minimalist home environment has been very helpful for me. Make it cozy. Make your space that you have control over like as spa-like as possible, okay? And if you can't do the whole house, start with a tidy little corner. Make your little cozy nook in the basement. Find a little attic corner, maybe make it your bedroom. If you have a nice closet, close yourself in there. Whatever you gotta do to mark out a little space in your house that you have control over and make it cozy. Or if you don't always have a spot that can stay set up, on your days off, roll out a yoga mat, light some incense, get a cozy blanket and create that space set up. Maybe have it all in a basket that you can roll it out easily on your day off, okay? Find some sort of peaceful environment. Our environment is really, really important for our mental health. Get on some cozy clothes. I'm gonna have a couple more like things to do if you have kids, but like if you have to get a babysitter for a couple hours, do it. Like that is part of recovery. That is part of village living. That is part of asking for help. That is part of boundaries. That is part of knowing that you burnt out on your day off might not be the best adult to be taking care of your children. They might actually be better off with a grandma for a couple hours or with a cousin, or at like a daycare or some sort of class where you can get a little bit of time back to yourself, okay? No shame in that. And nourishment. So I'm talking nice, warm, cozy drink, coffee, water, whatever. Catch up on hydration. Eat at least one super nutrient dense meal in the day. And I also don't think that you have to cook that. I know for me, I don't find cooking I'll do it, but I don't find it restorative or exciting in any way. So I love to order something out or have some sort of meal prep service or create something in advance like overnight oats or soup, or I do a lot of smoothies. If you don't find cooking enjoyable, ordering out is very, very much allowed. And I also think even if you have an hour to do this kind of practice, going out for coffee to a coffee shop is a great solution if you are someone who can bear to see the public on your day off. Sometimes I'm I don't want to see a soul, even nice coffee shop people. But if it would feel restorative to you, going out to coffee or to a little brunch spot, that's a really great way because it flips the tables on giving and receiving. You are no longer in the service industry providing service, you are receiving service. I think that is a really good way to energetically flip yourself into that. It's okay to be taken care of. It's okay for someone else to be taking care of me for a little while. Okay, the next S is stillness. So this could be that 3 minutes of deep breathing, your reclined bound angle. Maybe, and it doesn't have to be complete stillness. It could be just mental stillness of going for a walk without your phone, some grounding in the grass. Maybe a guided meditation if that feels supportive, okay? Practice contemplation. So mindfulness-based meditation would be helpful here. Training your nervous system to be okay with doing just one task at a time, slowly drinking just your coffee outside, listening to the birds for 1 cup of coffee. I promise you can do it. Even if you've never attempted to be a single tasker, just try. Just do an experiment and see what you think. But slowing down and stillness is the second S. Okay, E, enjoyment. So finding tiny pleasures that you can sprinkle into your day. And those are going to be different for everybody. A warm shower, listen to a favorite podcast, read a book, sit outside barefoot. Even if it's for 10 minutes, find something that you find joy in and pleasure in and do it. Okay. So when we do this intentional slowing down, when we breathe, when we feel in our bodies and we pause, it creates just enough space to quiet down those inner thoughts, or at least to hear them. It might not quiet them down. A lot of times people don't love to slow down because they don't want to deal with the stories that are actually going to pop up in their head if they move slower. Okay. There is this Carl Jung quote that until we take these unconscious stories in our head, those unconscious thoughts, until we take them out and bring them to a conscious space while we're looking at them and oh, interesting, I didn't know that I had an unconscious belief that I don't deserve rest. Let me ponder this. Let me contemplate this. Let me look at this consciously. Until we do that process, those unconscious things are going to rule our life and rule our lived experience. And we're going to feel like victims, and we're going to say well, it's just fate. Oh, rest isn't for me, rest is for other people. You're going to just assume that's normal, that's the truth, even though it's actually just a subconscious story in your head that you haven't looked at yet. So taking time to slow down, create enough spaciousness in your calendar to have a buffer between activities allows those thoughts to come out. And it's like a hygiene practice, right? It can be scary, it can feel kind of gross, but it's really helpful to kind of get those thoughts, get those beliefs out in front of us so we can look at them and decide, does it stay or does it go? Okay. So when we slow down like this, when we take those moments to breathe and pause, it creates just enough space for us to hear our own thoughts again. And I was like debating between two ways of saying this. One, I feel like time wealth, having a lot of time, is the new luxury, right? Like that is like a new status symbol, right? It used to be like, oh my gosh, I'm doing everything all the time, like look how cool I am. That is not the case anymore. If you actually start paying attention to culture and society, I actually think like at this point we're getting to a place where having a peaceful, calm, still, not packed life is actually a luxury like marker. And I think that that's actually really amazing. I actually think that that's actually a healthy step. But I think for people that work in healthcare, that is not a luxury. It is not a luxury. That is a necessity to be able to relax from the crazy environment that we work in. So I want you to think about it as, yes, it is a luxury that I want to go towards, but it's also kind of not a luxury. Like I need that to recuperate from what I've seen. Okay. That little part of you that wants to be balanced, that's been in that aggressive effort state for so long, that part of you that like knows you need to like swing the pendulum to the ease side a little bit, that part of you wants a spacious, soft, gentle schedule. Okay. You want a day off that feels like it's actually recovery. Okay, and that is what I cover in time design. I highly recommend joining if anything that I've said on here is feeling helpful. Highly, highly recommend. Okay, really quick, there's a couple other considerations I want you to think about. One, if you don't like the feeling of being unproductive all day, that's one of those things where it's like somewhere in you there is a internal belief that if you slow down, if you are not productive, that you are not good, you are not moral, you are not lovable, you are not like the definition of success in our society. Okay, if that is you, what we're going to do is we're going to hack that part of you that feels like you need to check off the to-do list and put these self-care things on your to-do list. Okay, I'm telling you it works, but take those things like drink a cup of water outside in the sun with my feet in the grass. That's going to go on your calendar, on your schedule. Just put it on there and then you get to check it off and take it off your list and feel like a productive citizen. You're just going to change the content of what is on your calendar. Okay, huge life hack right there. I have more to say there, but I'm going to skip over it for the sake of time. I'm going to skip this part too, unfortunately. I will make sure we cover all of that in time design, so definitely join. One other caveat that I can hear some people saying, and it's really funny because the first version of this class I taught before I ever had a kid, and now I'm teaching it again and I have a kid. I'm like, oh, I have a lot more insight about how to make this lifestyle happen even if you have a kid. Your recovery days might not be silent. They might not be solo, but that is okay. You have to invite your kids or whoever you are responsible for into a spacious, quiet lifestyle. Okay, there's a lot of great toddler yoga. Cosmic yoga is great. There's a couple other ones, but start with cosmic yoga because that's what I remember. You could have like spa hour with a toddler where you make some cucumber water, do a face mask or something, massage your little kiddo's feet, like just lay on your belly on a yoga mat. I promise you they're gonna come and be like, what are you doing? And it's gonna be like a fun, cute moment if you let it be. Create like a quiet morning basket for them, like full of like toys that they don't get to play with all day, or like some favorite books or coloring books. Like create things to give them to do. I'm a huge proponent of independent play and of not feeling like you have to be the one entertaining them. Like we don't do screens for the most part. We limit that stuff because I want my daughter to be able to entertain herself so that I can have a moment, right? It doesn't make me a bad mom to need her to know how to play independently sometimes. Game changer. Okay, modeling rest as a parent is a really important skill that you can pass along to your kids, so make it part of your family culture. Okay, another caveat, if you had a particularly rough day at work, do a brain dump into a journal and then tear those pages up or flush them or burn them or whatever. Like let it go, get it out of your system. Okay, What else do I have time to cover here? So, okay, let's just wrap it up because I actually do have a client in 1 minute. If you're watching this right now, I promise I'm coming. If you are watching this and this is helpful in any way, if you're like, oh my God, I need to not just upgrade my day off, I need to like upgrade my whole life, or my baseline needs to improve, definitely sign up for Time Design. We're going to detox your calendar first. You don't need a better planner, okay? You need more white space in the calendar that you do have. I think that this is freedom. That is empowerment, is to be able to decide what you get to do with your days, okay? A lot of women in healthcare are trying to build fulfilling lives like on top of already too packed calendars, and it just ends up feeling like they can't keep up, and it's like another way to fail, okay? We have to detox the calendar first. So if you're trying to like feel joyful and inspired, but your nervous system is still locked in survival mode, we have to address that, okay? So join Time Design. It's gonna be a helpful way to detox that calendar. We're gonna clear your schedule of everything that you did not consciously choose to be there, so that then you can rebuild your calendar around your values, your energy, your bandwidth, and the actual life that you would choose if you are being mindful and conscious about what you said yes to, okay? I will drop the link below. There is a ton of content already in there. And also we're going to have some live calls about it in May. So get in while you can. One of the things I did when I restructured my website is I was able to upgrade a lot of things that allowed me to decrease my pricing a ton. And that feels really good. That more accessible pricing for everyone who wants to join. So it's just gonna be $27, and that will get you access to all of the live courses in May, or live sessions in May. There's a ton that's already in there that you can get started on today. And just a reminder, if you've ever joined Time Design in the past, a lot of you have, you don't need to join again. You just get lifetime upgrades. So whatever you paid back then, you get access to this round, and I can't wait to add a little bit more to the vault in there. Okay. Let me know if you need any support in this. I'm really happy to be able to continue providing these courses in here, and reach out to me, send me a DM, drop a comment below. If you're watching this as a replay, #replay. And if you have any questions, just send me a DM. I'm pretty easy to get a hold of, and I would love to support you in creating a little bit more spacious schedule for yourself. All right, have a good day. See ya.